I mean, first off, embrace the suck. That's generic advice for anything that you're ever trying that you've never done before. Embrace the suck. You're going to suck, but that's okay.
All right. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Shit You Don't Learn in College. Today, my guest is Travis Chappell. Travis is the founder and CEO of Guestio, a new software that connects high-level guests with high-level content creators, and he is the host of the top-rated show Build Your Network. In addition to being featured in Entrepreneur, NASDAQ, Yahoo Finance, and Read Write, Travis has also been featured in Forbes as a top 10 podcaster that will change your life alongside Joe Rogan, Gary Vee, and Tim Ferris. His gift of relationships and building that has allowed Travis to interview and become close friends with many of the top influencers in the world, including people like John Maxwell, Amy Porterfield, Dean Graziosi, Grant Cardone, Jack Canfield, Lori Harder, JP Sears, Tom Bilyeu, and many more. On top of all of that, he's just a good, amazing family man, a father of two, married to the amazing Jackie, who I've got a chance to meet, his wife, and a good friend. So he does it all and some. Welcome to the show, Travis.
Xander, what's up, bro? Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for joining. So, I'm going to dig right into podcasting first because, actually, a lot of people don't know this, but you're the reason that I actually have a successful podcast. You're the reason that I've got a top-ranked podcast. I've got people listening to it, and I'm not just a nobody talking to nothing. So I just want to start off digging into podcasts. And specifically, you help people grow podcasts. Why are you so fascinated with podcasts?
To be honest, man, I was just a fan. I was a listener. I just really, I subscribed to a ton of podcasts back in the day. So after a while, just got to the point where I was like, you know what, this seems like a pretty cool way to make money. Because at the time I was kind of searching for what the next thing was going to be for me. I didn't really know what was going to happen at the time. So I knew that I needed to do something online. I knew that much. I was like, I know that, I'm a millennial, so like I got to figure this online thing out, or probably I'm not going to be as
everybody's
useful.
doing it. Why not me?
Yeah, exactly. And I could look into the future and be like, you know what, if I'm going to be valuable for getting hired or starting businesses or whatever, then I should probably figure out the way that my generation is going to be doing business, which is largely going to be online. You know what I mean? So podcasting was kind of my vehicle into that space.
Yeah, and you did it right. Obviously, you built a top-ranked podcast. You've been able to network with a lot of amazing people because of it. So you just mentioned kind of the millennial mindset and doing business moving forward. Do you think podcasting is important just for entrepreneurs, or do you think it's important for anybody in a 9-to-5 job, or, talk to me about that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I do think that it's super valuable for entrepreneurs because it brings more credibility, authority, and trust into your brand. Regardless of how many downloads you get, it's not really about the downloads, just about everything else that comes along with it. And so for people who are not an entrepreneur, people who are in 9-to-5, I still view it as being something that is a really valuable asset in your life. Because everybody, no matter who you are, should always be trying to improve or learn or grow or become a better version of themselves, especially if you have, big goals or aspirations in life, which if you're listening to a podcast like this, I'm sure that you do.
You most likely are, yeah.
Yeah, right. So if that's you, then you got to think about, if you're at an organization and you want to get a promotion, or you want to get that corner office, or you want to get something that a lot of other people in your company are also aiming for or shooting for, then you have to think about what's going to be the thing that differentiates me. Why would they give me the opportunity over everybody else, especially if you're in a high performance type of an environment where the competition's stiff and maybe you're used to just being on top, throughout your life. But now you're in this fast paced, efficient organization, and there's 12 of you that are there, and this is the first time you've had to compete like that. You know what I mean? Something like a podcast that is your best learning accountability partner, because you're learning constantly. When you have to create content, you have to fill it with something. So one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to be crappy content, or you're going to be somebody like me who's like, I don't want to put out crappy content, so I have to learn at an exponential rate
Right.
than comparatively to even my own listeners, because I want to make sure that the content I'm providing is actually really good quality content.
If I don't keep up, they're not going to stick around.
Yeah, exactly. And it became like a big accountability partner for me to continue to learn and grow and improve myself. So I feel like a podcast is a really great tool for that. I think it's a great tool for discovery. If you're, in a 9 to 5, and maybe you're not sure what the next 10 years of your future really holds. You're not sure what it looks like. You are cool with, staying at your job because it's a cool place to work, but you would also be cool with being an entrepreneur because maybe that lifestyle of having freedom to choose when you work is appealing to you. But you're just not exactly sure which path you should go down. We'll start a podcast and use it as a way to discover what path you should go down, because it's the best way to have conversations with people that are just a variety of different backgrounds, a variety of different careers, business models, different things that you can be doing with your life. And you get little glimpses into their world when you sit down and interview them for 30, 45 minutes to an hour. It allows you to be able to cultivate those connections, build that network, create more opportunity, learn more. Just so many benefits that come from having a podcast that have nothing to do with your download numbers, your sponsorships.
I was just going to say, everything that you just talked about has a lot less to do with your listenership and a lot more to do with just the act of doing it.
Correct. Yeah. And that's the reason, in my opinion, why most people don't have a show, is that they think it only has to do with downloads and listenership. And so if that's not a desire of
theirs, in the beginning, you're not going to have a lot of downloads and listenership, probably.
Almost none, especially if you're starting from scratch, like I was. If you're just jumping into the space and being like, I want to start a podcast, probably not going to just take off on the top charts tomorrow. You know what I mean? So it's definitely, I tell people there's so many other reasons to jump into podcasting. The listeners and the downloads, that's like the cherry on top. That's like the whipped cream, the cherry on the sundae. That's what comes in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, after creating consistent quality content for a long period of time, cultivating an audience and community and growing it and growing it and growing it and investing time, energy, and money into it. That's what it turns into. But at first, there's so many other reasons to jump on and start your first podcast.
So you just kind of hit on something, the importance of podcasting as a long-term investment, 3, 4, 5, 8 years down the line. Do you think the podcasting industry is continuing to grow? I had a mentor tell me 3 years ago. He's like, Xander, you should start a podcast. The only problem is I think you missed the boat, right? Podcasting was super big. Yeah, exactly. Right. So he goes, podcasting was super big, 2014, 2015. And now you've kind of missed the boat on it. Talk to me about that, 'cause I know you have a different opinion.
There are almost 40 million YouTube channels that exist. Yet people are starting YouTube channels left and right, and starting successful YouTube channels, because the market is continuing to expand. The market, in terms of viewers, hasn't gone down at all. They're 2 billion monthly active users plus on YouTube now. So with that audience growth, there is more room for creators to jump in and be able to make money.
Yeah.
Imagine if you could go back in time and start a YouTube channel when there was only 1 million of them. You know what I mean? A 40x. There's a 40x on 1 million YouTube channels. You know what I mean? How much easier would it have been to solidify yourself as an authority in your space if you would have started a YouTube channel back when there was 1 million instead of 40 million? Well, that's where we are right now with podcasts. Podcasts just crossed the 1 million mark in 2020.
Really? So we're only at 1 million podcasts.
Yeah, maybe now there might be close to 1.5 million or something like that. But we're talking total podcasts, bro. Not active podcasts, because there's a lot fewer active podcasts than there are total podcasts. There's a big podcast graveyard.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So podcasting is in its infancy still, man. It's such a, whenever I hear people say that, it's well, you may as well not do anything because everything's saturated. There's what is there? 700 million blogs. There's literally almost 800 million blogs the last time I checked. You know what I mean? But people still start blogs, and they still start successful blogs that do really well, that make a lot of money. You know what I mean? There's a 500,000 books that come out every single year. You know what I mean? I don't even know. I don't even know how many millions and millions of books there are in the world, but that doesn't prevent people from writing books, and it doesn't it doesn't slow down the effectiveness of a good book.
I don't know, man.
You know?
When I was getting ready to write Shit You Don't Learn in College, I was really thinking about how saturated the book market is, and I just
So you just didn't do it.
Almost turned it in, man. Almost turned it in.
But that's my point is like, you know, like we're still so in the infancy. I mean, 3 years ago it was like, that's when I started, was 2017, like end of 2017. And there's like 450 or 500,000 podcasts at the time, you know? So like,
so you're saying if I had actually listened to that initial advice and started my podcast, I could have been someone by now.
I mean, you definitely would have you already have a successful show. That's for sure.
And instead I just have to settle for what I am.
It's like planting a tree. It's like, I tell podcasts is like planting a tree. The best time to start a podcast was 10 years ago.
10 years. Yeah.
But the second best time is immediately, because it's only going to continue to get more saturated and more difficult as the years go by. But it's going to be around, man. Like look how long radio has been around. Radio has been around since what, the 30s, 40s?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and people still listen to the radio. It's changed a little bit, you know, it's mostly like Sirius XM kind of took over, and satellite radio is probably a little bit more popular than AM or FM. And it's probably more popular to a certain, you know, generation or demographic, but it still exists and it's still kicking, and it's still a way that a lot of people choose to consume content. Podcasting is just a better form of radio. That's literally all podcast is. It's just online,
it's the
on-demand
modern
radio.
form of radio. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So like it's not going to go anywhere. Like we still want to consume that type of content. It's easier to consume than any other type of content that's out there. That's why the podcast listenership is only going to continue to increase. You know what I mean? Like there's like 350 million podcast listeners in the entire world right now. You know what I mean? Like, again, compare that to YouTube, 2 billion plus monthly active users on YouTube. You know, if that audience 10X's like that and gets to there's 3 billion podcast listeners and you don't have a podcast, they're not going to listen to your non-existent podcast.
Non-existent
you know what I mean?
podcast. Yeah.
So,
dude, all right, Travis, I'm sold. I'm going to start a podcast. I think I'm going to do it. But so I think I want to go back to like some of the benefits that you kind of talked about, like the networking and the growth and everything like that. You've been able to connect with a large amount of some of the biggest influencers in the world because of your podcast. Can you talk me through how you do that? Is it just, I mean, the beautiful hair? Is it just the smile? What is it?
Yes, it's the beautiful hair and the smile.
Good answer.
Next question. No, bro, there's something magical about having a content platform.
Yeah.
Whatever the content platform is. I like podcasting the best for several reasons that we've kind of already talked about. But another one to throw into that mix is that it's kind of easier to get started with podcasting than it is for other different content platforms. Like you don't need a ton of stuff. You know what I mean? Like I'm talking into a really expensive mic right now, quote unquote expensive, you know, it's $400, but the first 3 years of my show was done on a $50 USB mic. So I didn't have a mixer. I didn't have any audio equipment. It was literally just a USB microphone plugged directly into my laptop. It cost me $50, and then my boom arm was like $12. You know what I mean? So it was super easy to get started. I didn't have to invest in a bunch of video equipment. I didn't have to have a video editor. You know, I didn't have to have any of that other stuff. It just was really seamless, easy to get started.
And you were able to do interviews with, you know, people like Dean Graziosi, Grant Cardone, like big names like that too.
Right. And those ones were all done in person, you know, at their places. Because a lot of these people that you want to interview, they already have their own studio setups. So I would just say like, oh yeah, I'm going to, like with Grant, I told him I'm going to be in Miami next week. You know, maybe I can just come by the office. And he was like, yeah, come through, see us. So then I booked my flight to Miami after that. You know what I mean?
So tell me a little bit about that, because I think that's something that you do very well. Like obviously your podcast is build your network.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you are an incredibly well networked person. And I think you mention this on your podcast all the time. Networking can get a bad name.
Yeah.
I'd rather say you're not just a well networked person. You're a great relationship person. You build really strong and healthy relationships with people. Like how do you do that?
Yeah, man, I try to make that distinction myself a lot, because networking is kind of one of those buzzwords that either fires you up. If networking is a word that like fires you up, usually you're doing it wrong. You know what I mean? Like the person that's like, yeah, I love to network. That's the networking. I call him networking Ned. because like they're the person at the cocktail party that everybody's trying to avoid, because all they're going to do is like run up over to you with some
they're
30
just running through the lines.
They're there for in-person cold calling. They're there to like shake as many hands they possibly can, throw a business card at your face, and then run to the next person and see how many people they can talk to in an hour, without drinking too many cocktails. So there's the networking Ned, but then there's the other side of the table, which is all the people that are so afraid of becoming networking Ned because of their bad experiences with him that they just neglect networking altogether. And there's a happy medium. There's a happy balance between those two people, and that's why I mainly refer to it as relationship building and not really networking, because it just kind of comes with this stigma that feels really slimy and smarmy.
Yeah, like you're almost trying to build a relationship to get something out of it,
which is the literal opposite of how to build good relationships.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like that's the problem with it, is that when you go to one of those, cocktail mixers, you're just putting a bunch of takers in a room together. And if you fill your network full of takers, then, like if you fast forward in 5 years from now, nothing, like you have to keep doing it is my point. Like if you fill your network full of givers, then at some point you can stop having to be the person that's always going out to the next thing and going to the new place, because you have so many built-in value-added relationships that you've built for the last 2 decades. You know what I'm saying? Like there's an end point to that game. The other game, there's no end point. That's why you see people at these networking
You got to
mixers,
keep hustling. You got to keep grinding to make it happen. Yeah.
They've been a State Farm insurance agent for the past 35 years, and they make 60 to 80K a year every single year for the past 35 years because they're doing it the same exact way. And that way isn't the way to build a long-term book of business with people that actually give a shit about what you do. You know what I mean? Yeah. The way to do it is you have to understand the most important thing in relationships, and that's value. Value is the most important thing.
What do you mean value? Yeah.
So, so this is what I tell everybody, from, anybody that asks me this question, I tell them this statement. So if you're, taking notes or anything, write this down if you're listening. Your network will grow in direct correlation to the amount of value that you can add to other people.
Yeah.
That's going to be different for every single person listening to this right now. Because back when I started in this world, I didn't have much value to offer. You know what I mean? Like I was brand new to the game. I didn't have any knowledge that I could offer that was helpful. I didn't have any
you didn't have a top podcast that you could bring people on.
I didn't have an asset like a podcast that had an audience that I could put people in front of.
Yeah.
I didn't have a ton of money. I didn't have a ton of connections. In fact, I had almost no connections because I had left this religious bubble that I grew up in when I was in my early 20s. And so I was really starting my network from scratch. Like I didn't have really anything to offer at the time. What I did have though, was I had time. And what I found out was that people who are really busy, they value time. So if I can do something for them for free to just give them some of their time back, that's a big value add, even if I didn't have any of the other stuff to add value with. Now, it was much more difficult for me to add a lot of value to somebody at that time, but I could still do it. You know what I mean? So perfect example was one of my first mentors, Lee Dumas, a podcast guy, makes millions of dollars. His show has made, I think, almost $20 million in revenue since 2012 when he started it. And so I wanted to,
that's not too bad.
Yeah, no, it's not too shabby. The crazy thing though, is take a look at his gross and net revenue. That's what'll make you swoon. You know what I mean?
Or are they just exactly the same?
Yeah, very, very similar. If he pull and by the way, anybody listening to this can go check it out. He publishes all of his income reports every single month on eofire.com. You can go check out all of his revenue for the past, 9 years he's been in business, where it comes from, and see what his expenses breakdown is and everything like that. But when he makes $250,000, he pockets 220 of it. You know what I mean? Jeez. So he's just a profit generating machine on his podcast. And so this is a guy that I wanted to learn from. But again, at the time, I didn't have anything to offer of value. I didn't have any real relationship building, power at the time, because I was brand new, and I needed everything from him. I needed his connections. I needed his knowledge. I needed all those things. So I didn't really have much to offer. All I knew at the time was I came from a door-to-door sales background. So I was pretty good at selling stuff. And that one small skill set that I had developed in my early 20s, I took to the table with him. I volunteered 3 days of my time to work a booth for him at an event that he was speaking at to sell his product to people at that event. And, you know, and I had worked a lot of home shows and trade shows and stuff like that for the door-to-door companies that I had sold at in the past few years. So I had a lot of experience doing it. I was pretty good at it. You know, I probably could have charged good money for it or at least gotten commissions from it, but I didn't ask for anything. All I wanted to do.
That's not what you were there for. You were there for a long-term relationship.
I was there for proximity to somebody who could open doors of opportunity for me that other people wouldn't be able to. And I was there to have a real relationship with the guy. I didn't like, the last thing I wanted, bro, is for him to make an intro and be like, oh yeah, this is Travis. He paid me money one time to come to my house and learn from me. You know what I mean? Like I wanted it to be more like, oh no, this is like my friend Travis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wanted to figure out a way to build some sort of a synergistic relationship where I could offer some value. And like I said, at the time, the best way I could offer value was volunteering 3 full days of work. Like that was a lot to add a good amount of value. Now, fast forward the clock, and this is what kind of goes back to the beginning of the conversation where I said that your network will grow in direct proportion to the amount of value that you can add to the people. Now it's significantly easier for me to add more value for somebody than even I was able to do with 3 full days of my time. I can do that now in a 5-minute email introduction to somebody in my network that I've worked hard to build a relationship with. That's arguably much significantly higher value than 3 days of my time was worth back then. You know what I'm saying? So like that's why you have to continually improve yourself and work on yourself, work on your craft, work on your skill set, you know, make more money if you can, know more people if you can. Like the more things that you can add into your arsenal of value, the more people that you can connect with. So that's the baseline understanding that you got to start with is like, I have to become a person of value, and then I have to be willing to give that value without the expectation of receiving any in return.
And I think that's hard for a lot of people because the ego gets in the way, right?
Yeah,
the
definitely.
ego gets in the way and we're like I want something back, or, you know, like, oh, like my time's valuable too, or something like that. And so that you kind of get in this struggle rather than just being a giver.
Sure. Right. Exactly. And there's a great book on this called Give and Take by Adam Grant. I love Adam Grant's stuff because he's I think 6 or 7 years in a row voted best professor at Wharton School of Business. Or something like that. But basically, I say that to say all of his books are just steeped in research and statistics and data, which is the stuff that I like to read. It's not anecdotal. It's not just like, I was successful and here's my story. You know, it's like, those are great. Yeah. But this, like, sometimes I like reading those stuff. So he wrote a book called Give and Take. And basically, he outlines 3 different types of people in the book, 3 different types of reciprocity styles. There's the giver, there's the taker, and there's the matcher. The giver, obvious what that is. It's the person that's willing to give without the expectation of receiving anything in return. There's the taker who just takes, right? The people we were talking about earlier, that the networking mixer that just are there to like close business that day or the day after, or they view their time as wasted. And then there's the matcher. And that's the person that's only willing to give value if they can get a measurable amount of similar value in return from another person.
Yeah.
And when I first read that book, I probably would have identified myself as a matcher at the time. Like it just made sense to me. It like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It just makes sense. You know what I mean? That's the only way to really be fair about it. But after reading that book, I was just kind of like, man, there's no way around it. The best way to go through life is to be a giver for multiple 100%. Reasons, not just financially and success and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately it's going to be better for your relationships in general, and you're going to be a happier, more fulfilled person, which ultimately is more as a higher form of success anyway.
See, that's the one that really gets to me, right? Like, if you really want to be selfish, give more.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you give more, you're going to feel a shit ton better.
Yep.
You're like, that's, if you want to think of it selfishly, if you want to get the most out of a relationship, you just got to go give more, right?
Yep, exactly. And it's got to be in a genuine way, and you just can't expect anything in return. So there's givers, takers, and matchers. Can you guess which group ends up at the top of the success ladder? And I'm sure it's pretty obvious from our conversation we've been having so far, but I'm going to let you guess, Sander.
I'm going to guess that it's not the takers.
Okay, smart.
It's probably not the matchers, so I'm going to go with the givers. Let's do it.
Yep. Givers are at the top of the success ladder. Guess who's at the bottom of the success ladder?
I would have to guess it would be the takers.
It's also givers.
No
So
shit.
yeah, so that's what it's a really great book, bro. If you haven't read it, I recommend it.
I'm going to now because you just stumped me.
Yeah, so givers at the top of the success ladder, givers at the bottom of the success ladder, and then he goes into a bunch of ways to make sure that you're a giver that ends up at the top of the success ladder instead of at the bottom.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because there are a lot of givers, and then basically they get into that space, and I think a lot of people get afraid of being a giver at the bottom,
Yeah,
and that's what causes them to be a matcher
exactly.
or a taker,
Or
and then they get stuck somewhere in the middle.
right, exactly, because they've experienced being stepped on by people or something, so they're just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go take what's mine. They become a taker because they're like, oh, this person just took from me and took from me and took from me, and now I'm down here and they're up here. I'm just gonna go take from people.
So I'm gonna go take from the next person, right? This is how the world works.
Right, exactly. Like just accepting that, like, that's fate. So if I want to be successful, that's just what I got to do. And then you got the people who try to be the matchers because they had a negative experience in giving. So there's the givers who just give, and never think about themselves, their well-being, their well-being, and they let people walk all over them. And those are the ones that end up at the bottom of the success ladder. The ones at the top have a few different common denominators, which I would rather you read the book to go into it, because it's so much better than what I'd be able to do on a call like this. But basically, like, one of them is you have to be willing to ask when you have an ask. Yeah. You got to be willing to go in for the ask. You got to be willing to ask people for help when you need it, or for value if you need it, or for something like an introduction or a connection or a piece of advice, or you have to be willing to make the ask at some point. You can't just give, and never, ever ask for something. Because a lot of people who are natural givers end up at the bottom of the success ladder, because if you're a natural born giver, like, that's just in you, that's who you are, you find it really difficult to ask for something.
It feels really uncomfortable to actually ask for something.
Exactly. But it goes back to that age-old illustration of your kids sitting next to you on the airplane and the oxygen masks drop down. They tell you all the time, you need to put yours on first, because you can't help your kid if you pass out from lack of oxygen. So put yours on first. You got to take care of you first. And so a lot of people who are natural givers don't do that. They never take the time to think about themselves and help themselves and their families first. And then another one would be whenever you realize that somebody has a pattern of being a taker in your life, you have to make a decision to cut off the giving without expecting anything. And that's where it gets kind of tricky, because sometimes you don't really know, like, are they a taker, or am I just not giving enough value? You know what I mean? Or maybe I just need to reevaluate the way that I'm doing it. But, I've had this happen a few times where I've just been like, you know what? I've just been a giver and a giver and a giver to this person. And I've done some like some pretty big favors for them. And I've asked for a couple of things, like sometimes, and like they've done absolutely nothing at any point of the relationship. And that's, bottom line is, that's not a relationship. Relationships by definition are reciprocal. So if there's absolutely zero reciprocation, then at some point you have to, like, basically switch your reciprocity style with that person. So now if you identify a taker in your life, you have to switch your reciprocity style and treat it like a matcher in those specific one-off situations where it's like, I can't continue to give you X, Y, and Z, because
until I actually get shown this is a real relationship.
Exactly. And that you're not just taking from me for the sake of taking from me. Like, you got to be willing to draw a line with takers, or that's how you kind of end up at the bottom of the success line. But anyway, it's all that to say that's a fascinating read, and it's one of the top relationship building books that I recommend across the board to anybody.
That's amazing. Thank you for that share, man. So one other thing that I think is like, and I think all of this really stems from your unique ability to build relationships, whether it's the networking, the podcasting. The other thing that I think you and I kind of always nerd out on is sales, right? Your ability to sell and influence others, to take actions purposefully and intentionally to do things, frankly, that they should be doing a lot of the time in the face of their own fear. Talk to me about your view of sales and just sales in general, because I think, again, like networking, sales is something that gets a really bad rap. Sure.
Yeah. Sales is oxygen, man. That's the best way that I can say it is like, sales is oxygen. You have to have it. And especially if you're listening to this and you're any sort of entrepreneur, or you're trying to become an entrepreneur, you got to embrace selling at some point in the journey, and at least to a certain level of competency, right? Like if that's just not your gig, that doesn't mean that you have to take something that's a weakness of yours and turn it into your biggest strength. Okay. I'm a big believer in playing to your strengths and hiring your weaknesses. I'm a big believer in that. But that being said, there are certain things that you need to at least have a level of competence in. And I think selling is one of them.
Well, you just mentioned, play to your strengths, hire to your weaknesses, right? Well, you can't hire someone unless you can sell them on your vision and what you're doing.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Like sales is in everything that we do. You know what I mean? It's a part of our lives, even if you don't think that you are a salesperson. How are you going to get people on board for anything that you want to do if you can't sell them somehow, some way, influence them to make a decision, right? Persuade. Like there's got to be some sort of skill that you have or level of competency that you have to be able to convince people that your ideas are worth sharing or your product or services are worth buying. Like it's a non-negotiable in my opinion, man. And like if you never master any sort of selling, influencing, persuading, your ability to create abundance and wealth in your life, I think significantly drops because the reason that I can take big risks in my business and we've had private conversations and stuff about different revenue and different goals that I've set and different investments that I've looked at and been like, man, that's a big risk, but I've done them anyway. The only thing that allows me to take really big risks in my business is the knowledge and the confidence that I know that if worse comes to worse, I can go out and I can sell my ass off and make that money back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If everything were to blow up tomorrow,
right?
Like you can't get rid of your skill set of the ability to sell.
I can go bring in that amount of money in the next month if I have to. You know what I'm saying? Like that confidence, bro, like that's what gives me the ability to risk a lot more than most people are willing to risk.
I think that's really important though, right? Because to become an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to take risks. You have to be willing to make decisions that frankly other people aren't willing to make because they're batshit crazy.
Exactly.
Right? Entrepreneurship is not logical. Like let's just leave it at that. Right? So like you have to be willing to go do illogical shit to be successful as an entrepreneur. And if you don't have confidence in your ability to sell or pull yourself out of the gutter if everything crumbles, right? Chances are you're not going to make those decisions.
Right.
You're going to stay stuck in a 9-to-5. You're going to stay stuck in, something that you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
You feel that that's the only way for you to stay alive.
Yeah, you're going to stay stuck at an income level because you don't feel comfortable making a hire that you know that you need to make or something like that, where it's like that's the only reason I know I can hire people, bro. It's like if I hire somebody and like my payroll expenses are getting pretty high and I know it's cutting it close on my expected revenue, then it's like, well, I better go sell some more stuff then. You know what I mean?
I should get a little bit to work and go get some money.
Exactly. But if you don't have that ability, like I can't imagine what it would be like to run a business without the ability to sell. I honestly can't. I know people do it, and I know people that do it, fairly well in terms of because they find somebody who's really good at it. But maybe that's you, is like, if you don't learn to sell and you're like, okay, well, I got to go find somebody who's good at it. Maybe you got to give away 50% of your company to bring somebody on board who can sell the vision, because that's something that you're just, I'm just not very good at it. Well, then, okay, great. But give away 50% of your company. See how that makes you feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Maybe you should get good at it, or at least it's competent.
It's actually interesting you bring that up, because I see a lot of starting entrepreneurs do that, right? I see a lot of starting entrepreneurs find, something like this, like whether it's sales or marketing. I work specifically with a lot of coaches, right? So, coaches love to coach. What do they suck at doing?
Everything else.
Selling everything else. Sales and marketing, right? So a lot of them will go out there and try to find somebody that can tie into that and be the seller and the marketer, and they can just be the coach. And I think the big problem that I see there is like, nobody's going to be as passionate about your business and your coaching, everything you're doing as you are, unless you can sell them on it. Right.
Yep.
And so if you're not already successful, why is this salesperson going to come work with you when, just like, you mentioned, Travis knows he can sell? Like, why don't I just go sell myself and take 100% of the profit? Yeah.
Right? And in any partnership formation like that too, like, you have to examine who holds the asset. So if you're a good coach, but you can't sell anything, then your work becomes exponentially harder to bring on good salespeople at that point, because it's like, well, why wouldn't they just go sell it for themselves or go sell it for somebody else who is good at those things, who has a better organization set up? Why are they going to take a chance on you? And then you got to sell them on you, which is selling anyway. Like there's no way around it. You know what I mean?
You're gonna have to learn how to sell.
Exactly.
Oh, that's too funny. So say you're somebody out there that knows they need to learn how to sell. Maybe they want to become an entrepreneur. Like, what are some tips that you have for them I think maybe one mindset tip, because I think everybody is afraid of sales. And then maybe one, like, here's where you can start to learn how to sell tactically tip.
Yeah. I mean, first off, embrace the suck. That's generic advice for anything that you're ever trying that you've never done before. Embrace the suck. You're going to suck, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, people have this weird idea that, like, and it's probably largely due to I don't know if you ever read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, but it's a really great one on growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I think a lot of kids are trained in that fixed mindset where, if they don't show immediate competency or proclivity toward this new thing that they're trying, their parents and their teachers immediately discourage them from doing it. It's like, well, maybe you're just not good at that. It's like, well, maybe you just got to work a little bit at it, because nobody's just good at stuff only the lucky ones are just naturally good at something. You know what I mean? Like, only the LeBron Jameses of the world are naturally good at basketball. Right. Yeah.
Even then, like, they still had to put a ton of work in to get to, like, you naturally at a level, but you're still working your ass off to become a pro.
Exactly. That's what makes Kobe. That's what made MJ. That's what makes LeBron. Is like, those guys are extremely talented and the hardest workers in the room. You know what I mean? And that's what makes them the best at what they do. But that all that to say, basically, like, just know that you're going to suck at first, and that's totally okay. The second thing that I would say is go get reps. Go get reps. Like, put as many reps in as you can. There's a lot of people that I know they want to try something new, but they're so internally afraid of trying that thing. They find ways to study that craft for like 11 years before they ever give it a shot. You know what I'm saying? It makes them feel like they're taking action because, I bought this sales course, so I'll start selling soon.
That counts. That counts, right, Travis? I bought the sales course.
Right, exactly. And it's like, okay, even if you take all of the lessons, even if you read the top 10 books, eventually you're gonna have to pick up the phone and sell. And the absolute best way to learn in a sales environment is to sell and put as many reps in as you can. Because I'll tell you something, bro. When you're reading a book and you learn something new, it's kind of like, oh, that's neat. And then you keep going on. If you are on a sales call and you just lost $10,000 because you messed something up, you're going to figure it the fuck out. You know what I mean? Like, you're like,
feel
exactly
it all the way to your core.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, the best way is just reps, man. Like, I did door to door for like 6-7 years, and it was just one of the best things that came from door to door is just the amount of reps that I put in, the amount of conversations that I had with people, the amount of times where I had to listen to somebody's body language rather than listen to the words that they're saying, where I had to look at somebody's or listen to somebody's tonality instead of listen to the words, or like I had to, you know what I mean? I had so many interactions with so many different people from all different types of cultures, backgrounds, races, languages, so many different people that it taught me how to communicate and persuade people at that kind of a level because of all the reps that I put in on, thousands of doors over that time period. That's a lot of conversations with people that you can learn from and get better at, over a long period of time. So put in the reps, man. So just expect that you're going to suck at first, and that's okay. And then be willing to put in the reps until you're better at it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna add a quick little exercise for everybody, just because I think this is really pertinent. Like, if you're out there and you're thinking, great, Travis, like I want to go put in the reps, but I don't have anything to sell. So this is an exercise that we actually do with all of our clients. Go ask 20 people for $5. Go and try to sell 20 people on giving you $5 without telling them why. Right? And then I know this goes right in the face of what Travis talks about, always be a giver, right? But I'm going to fix that. Okay. So what you actually do is you go out there with a wad of 21s. And so anybody that gives you $5, you give them the 5 back and a $1 bill. So basically you're basically learning to ask and figure out how you can frame this to see who can get you $5, because you know that if they give you $5, you're going to be able to give them 6 back and it's going to make their day. So just a quick exercise that we do this with every single one of our clients, but I thought it'd be really helpful. Travis,
awesome.
anything you want to add to that? Does that sound like a fun one?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm going to start stealing that and making people do that, because
all yours, dude.
It's
all
the
yours.
reps, bro. It's the reps, and it's being bold enough to go in, for the ask when other people can't, because if you do that, you're probably going to have a bunch of people who like tell you to F off and stuff like that. But like, man, that's just earning your stripes. That's just earning your stripes.
It's so funny because we've had people that have gone 0 for 20. Right. And then they're just like, but I don't fear rejection anymore.
Exactly.
By the end of it.
Exactly.
And then we've had people legitimately go 20 for 20 and be like, wow. I've found a new love for sales because I found out that when I sell somebody on giving me $5, I get to give them $6 in value back, which I'm going to take to any business that I run in the future. When somebody buys, $1,000 program from me, I'm going to make sure that they get $2,000 worth of value of it. Right. So beautiful.
Love it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Take it to your clients, man. I know they'll enjoy it. So a couple of quick, I know we're coming up on time here. So a couple of quick speed round questions for you, Travis. The first one that I always have to ask everybody is, what do you define success as?
Man, like for me, for myself.
Let's say for you or for anybody in general.
Okay. So for anybody,
if I'm listening to this and I've been told that success is it's the 6-figure corporate job, the steady income, the white picket fence, 2.5 kids, all that sort of stuff. What is success actually?
So my generic, success defined for anybody is it all starts with self-awareness and clarity.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. I think success is defined differently by each individual, and you have to figure out what that means for you. And so if you don't spend any time with yourself, if you never do the inner work, if you've never, if you're one of those people that can never sit in silence, you should try it sometime. You know what I mean? Because there's some people that literally can't. I used to be that way. That's why I know about it, because I used to be that way.
I'm right there with you.
If you're driving in the car for 25 minutes and you can't just be with yourself and your thoughts, you should, try it, do it. Practice it, get better at that, because if you don't know who you are, how do you expect to create happiness and success in life? You don't even know what that means to you.
Nobody's going to be able to tell you that either.
Yeah, right. Some people will look at $10 million as a raving success, but other people will look at it as oh, that's peasant money. Or other people will look at it as I would never make that kind of money. You know what I mean? Maybe success to that person is 50 grand a year, being smart with their money and being able to spend time with their family on the weekends when they get off of work. Success is I have friends from growing up that are still the homies, you know what I mean? We've known each other since we were 3-4 years old. So they're my best friends, and neither one of them do any sort of entrepreneurial stuff or business stuff. They don't do anything like I do. They're two of the happiest dudes I know, one of them's in the corrections department in California. And one of them's, it works for the county and does road maintenance for the county. You know what I mean? But they're great. They're happy. They're quote unquote successful. It stems from a true deep understanding of who you are and what you're meant to accomplish in this world. And then the second step is go get it, and by the way, if you're sitting there thinking well, my goal is just to, smoke weed and do nothing every day, I don't think that it's possible to be happy doing that personally. I just don't think that it's possible. So if that's,
you're going to get bored eventually.
Yeah. So within reason, it's about self-awareness. You gotta, just look at what's important to you, what matters to you, and then go get it and put in the work to go get it. I think productivity in general is a ingredient to anybody's success. Whatever that looks like for you, productivity is, I think, is one of the things that we are supposed to do as humans. And I think that if you are stuck never being productive or generating any productivity, I think that you're going to struggle with your mental health a little bit on the inside. But all that to say that, I think success is defined differently by everybody. And the only way that you're going to know what that means for you is if you do some deep diving self-awareness and get some clarity around what you want out of life.
Get quiet and listen inward.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then for me specifically, I define, I after doing a lot of that work, and I still do a lot of that work because I want to make sure that I'm actually moving toward the target that I still want to achieve. You can't just do the work once when you're 20 years old, because that's how you wake up when you're 40, having climbed the wrong mountain, and then looking back and being like, oh, there goes 20 years. I guess I better try something else now.
I feel like I should be over there.
Yeah, exactly. Because you never took any, you never took an account every single year, or every single month, or every single week that okay, I still want to make sure that I'm hitting this goal, right? I still want to make sure I'm on the right. So for me, I define success as happiness, fulfillment, and abundance within my life and my family's life, and stuff like that. So for me, a couple of my big values would be freedom. I want the freedom to be able to spend time with the people that I love, doing things that I love, going places that I love. And so freedom, since that's such a huge value of mine, it requires that I make a lot more money than the majority of other people desire to make. Because I know the level of freedom that I want. I don't want my bank account to prevent me from traveling to where I want to travel, or staying at a hotel that I want to stay at, or flying first class if I want to fly first class, or flying
the resort in Costa Rica that we're heading to in a month.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I want to do that stuff. I want to be able to go to those places. I want to be able to make those decisions. I want to be able to, to bring a bunch of my buddies or friends who don't make a lot of money on a trip and pay for all their stuff. I just want to be able to do what I want when I want with the people that I want. And I know that money is a huge part of that. So money now is a huge part of my life, studying money, learning about money, trying to make money, but it's not for the sake of just making money. Cause I think that again, people will define success as well, it's a certain amount of money. No, that's not true really. Cause if the money just sits there, it doesn't do anything good for you. You gotta have an idea of what you're going to use it for. So for me, success is freedom, and it's fulfillment, and it's happiness. And so I try to live my life to obtain those things.
And I think you kind of hit on, this was actually my next question, and I think you may have already answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Talking all about money and the everything that money can bring you, but what is one thing to you that is more important than money?
Family, impact, freedom. Yeah. I would say I put all those above money. That's
all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I want to make a lot of money though, cause money allows for all those other things to happen. You know what I'm saying? How many people get divorced every year over financial problems or money? Yeah. It's crazy high. It's crazy high percentage of people that split up over money. So if your money's in abundance and you're on the same page about how to manage that money, that's a huge thing. That's usually a big part of most people's problems in life that you erase.
I think the big thing about that, right, is money doesn't solve all of your problems.
Exactly.
But not having money creates a few more.
Exactly. The way that I look at it, man, is past a certain point, past the poverty line, I think there's actual studies on this, past $60,000 a year, there's almost no difference in happiness between making $60,000 a year versus $60 million a year. There's no difference in what that money does to your happiness level. But yeah, I look at money as the ability to just choose the things that I want to do. Money is just the tool. It's just an amplification of who you already are. You know what I mean? So it's either gonna, if you're a bad person, it's gonna make you a worse person. If you're a good person, it's gonna make you a better person. But the way that I look at it, man, is if money doesn't make you rich or if money doesn't make you happy and money doesn't make you unhappy, then I'd rather have a lot of it. You know what I mean? If there's no correlation, then I would rather have a bunch of it, because that seems like a better way to live life.
That's a valid point. I like it. So one more question for you. What's the most recommended book that you've been giving out this last year or so?
On any topic in particular?
anything. Yeah.
If I'm gonna recommend like one book that I think would probably be a book that doesn't get recommended very often on a show like this, because I assume a lot of them are probably like the Think and Grow Riches and How to Win Friends and Influence People and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'll try to stay out of business entrepreneurship, even though I have a ton of those types of books that have been absolutely revolutionary for me, and just give one on life in general. And I would say that it's probably a good idea to read The Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Nice.
Or
Great book.
or another one would be Hardwiring Happiness. I think both of those are really good. There's one called Zen and the Art of Happiness. There's just a few books like that I've read that I've never regretted my time reading anything on like philosophy, on how to live life, on how to be a happier person, or how to be fulfilled, or, you know what I mean? Just stuff like that, that I think that you shouldn't put those types of, put that type of reading off. So those are a couple of my top books in that sense.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that, if you're wondering what kind of value you can bring to other people too, if you're a happier person, people just want to be around
You're
you.
magnetic, man.
Right?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
magnetic. So even if you don't have the money or the knowledge to bring to people, if you've got a big ass smile and a heart of gold, people want to be around you.
Yep,
So
exactly.
I love that. All right, man. Well, this has been absolutely stellar. I think we could have probably kept going on, but I think I just want to make sure that everybody knows where they can learn more about Travis, what's on the horizon for you, and obviously everything that you do to help people build podcasts as well.
Yeah, man. So if you guys want to check out some of the stuff that I got going on, you're listening to this right now. That means you like podcasts. So whatever app you're in right now, go search Build Your Network and you'll find my show there. We got, coming up on 600 episodes now of the show. A lot on relationship building, networking, and really entrepreneurship in general is like the main category that we're ranked in. So that would be one place to check out some of my stuff. And then travischappell.com basically for everything else. CHAPPELL, travischappell.com. You can head over there. All my socials are there, and different things that I'm working on. They're all over there as well. And then if you want to learn how to podcast better, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to help out if I can.
Beautiful. Thanks a ton, Travis. I know our audience is going to get a ton out of this, but thanks for being on the show, man.
Appreciate it, Xander. Always a blast hanging out for a bit.